Hey y'all, let's talk more about Orishas in the Bible. This is going on YouTube and TikTok. Hey guys, this is Jacolia of Jacolia Gems. Thank you for once again coming back home, family. For those of you that happen to be new here, welcome. I definitely hope you hear something today that will persuade you to stay. If you have not already done so, exactly what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button, like the video, comment down below, and share to your social media platforms. So, y'all, on today we're going to be talking about the Orisha Yemaya. Once again, linguistically, in the Yoruba and in West Africa languages, the word Orisha, Ori means head. In Hebrew, Ori is going to be which is light. We understand that in the Bible, the head or the light of man are known to be synonymous. Case in point, when we begin to look at the word Bereshit in Hebrew, this is going to be the word that is in the beginning. It also means at the head. The root word resh, Resh, means head in Hebrew. In the beginning, God said, "Let there be light." A lot of people began to take this to be the creation of of Chaldean, where the Elamite text began to scribe the creation of the earth from An or Anu, which means sky, and Ki, which is going to be for the earth. When we begin to look at Elam, this will begin to take us to the book of Genesis, the 10th chapter, to prove that the Hebraic Bible is not plagiarizing from the Elamite text of the Epic of Gilgamesh, but is going to prove that Elam is a Semitic person. When we begin to look at Genesis 10 and 21, and Shem also the father of all the children of Eber. So Shem is where you get the word Semitic. Semitic means Afro-Asiatic. He is not only the father of his children, but Shem is going to be the father of Eber's children as well. Eber is where you're going to get the words Hebrew, Hibiru, and Apiru. And Shem is the brother of Japheth the elder. Even unto him were children born. The children of Shem is going to be Elam. This is where you get the Epic of Gilgamesh. And Asher, these are the Assyrians, and Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Okay, so this is just proving that these texts are written by the same Afro-Asiatic people groups. So when you begin to look at Isha in the Orisha, Isha in Hebrew is going to mean wife. Ish means husband. So the light or the head is going to be the husband and the wife. When we begin to look at the book of Proverbs, let's see, when wisdom was possessed, wisdom possessed in the Bible. Proverbs 8 and 22 is going to read as such. And it states, the Lord, or El, possessed me in the beginning. In Bereshit, wisdom was possessed before his works of old. Let's look at Proverbs 8 and 22 in the Hebrew to see if this possession would constitute Ish or Isha, husband and wife. This word is going to be kana. Kana means to attain, to teach, to keep, to get, to provoke to jealousy, to purchase, to recover, or to redeem. This word is also going to mean to create or to erect, an establishmentary. This word is used in the same concept of marriage in the Bible with Genesis 4 and 1. Let's begin to see what is Genesis 4 and 1 state. And Adam knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. So when her son was gotten or acquired, this is after childbirth. This redeeming can be in the form of the Most High redeeming his people back from captivity, back from exile, which is the remarrying of the bridegroom in the biblical narrative. When we begin to see that this divine marriage between wisdom and El began to use wisdom to create the good earth. The Bible begins to say, call no man good, but the Bible also defines the wife as a good thing. Line up on line, precept on precept. Ruth 4:4 begins to show that Boaz legally acquired both land and the duty of levirate marriages, meaning that the rights of the kinsman, which is still shown in West Africa and India and the Arabic nations, which are African nations, at the same time. So if a woman was married to a man and her husband passed away, the man in closest relation to her would have the duty of marrying her if he decides. If not, he can pass on to the next man, which is what Boaz did, which is why Boaz did not go into Ruth, because he knew that there was another relative that was more closely related to her husband than he was. And when that other relative did not decide to marry Ruth, they did the ritual so that he could publicly reject the marriage, and then Boaz went unto her. This is going to be Ruth 4:10. So this marriage of the husband and wife at the head where there is light would be the word for Orisha in West Africa. And how can we begin to line up these nations and people groups with the biblical narrative? You're going to go into Genesis, the 10th chapter. When you begin to see Genesis 10, the sons of Ham. Ham is going to be the name of Kemet. Kemet is Egypt. Cush is going to be Ethiopia, but it's going to also be the southern Arabian Cushitic Sabine people. You're also going to see Cushites amongst the Hebrews and the Assyrians. Mizraim is where you are going. Well, the Ham is actually going to not only be Kemet, but the entire land of Africa, South Africa specifically as well. Mizraim is where you're going to get the government. This is Egypt. Put is where you're going to get Libya. Canaan is where you're going to get the mountainous regions and the uninhabited regions in the BC times that was fully inhabited by giants. We have to understand that modern day Ghana was not modern day Ghana during that time. It was in the North Africa. West Africa, South Africa was inhabited by giants. Line up on line, precept on precept. So these people group were in the African subcontinent. Therefore, when we begin to share the oral traditions and the writings of West Africans, East Africans, South Africans, East Indians, Native Indians, all these people group, you can find their stories in this Hebraic book because it belongs to them. Line up on line, precept on precept. So let's begin to look linguistically at Yemaya. And TikTok, I'm just definitely probably going to end up going over 10 minutes. So Yemaya is an Orisha or a maternal deity of the sea, fertility, and the moon in the Yoruba religion. When we begin to look at the Yoruba, let's go ahead because I want y'all to be able to follow me in scripture. Gideon is Yoruba Baal, okay? So when you begin to type Yoruba in Hebrew, and you're going to add the letter L to it, you are literally going to get the name Yerubbaal. Yerubbaal or Gideon is spoken about, and his name is also going to be spelled Yerubbaal. The Yerubba, that's literally Yoruba. Yoruba Baal is going to be spoken about in the book of Judges. The book of Judges takes place around, it begins to start in 1372 at the death of Moses and go all the way throughout the 1100s. You can begin to find the name of Abimelech in ancient Egypt during this time, and a lot of our kings' names are listed in Egypt, as well as in the Moabite stone, the Midianite stones, and the Assyrian analogs. Later on, Jehu, the king of Judah, he is seen in the Moabite stone. It's just a lot of biblical things that are literally sourced from places and placed into the biblical narrative, because these Amorites, these Assyrians, these Canaanites, these Midianites, these Moabites, their stories, their wars, so on and so forth, is in the Bible as well. So when we began to look at Yoruba Baal in the time of the Judges, he is from the tribe of Manasseh, right? But it's important to understand that Gideon lived in Ephra, Ephra, Ephra. When you begin to linguistically understand that the letter P and the letter B are formed in the same parts of the mouth, the name Eber and the name Epher are going to be linguistically related. Let's go back to the book of Genesis, the 10th chapter. And we'll begin to see Eber has a relative, has a grandson to be exact, by the name of Ophir, Ophir. Ophir is the same as the landmass of where Gideon from the tribe of Manasseh lived at. It's important to understand that Ophir, Ephra, Oper is going to be the same root as Ephraim. Manasseh and Ephraim are brothers. So where you see Ephraim, you are most likely going to see Manasseh as well. The Yoruba are going to be known as the strange people to native Africans, and they identify as being Beni Ephraim, or sons of Epher. They can be direct descendants of Ephraim, or they can be from the landmass of Epher, where the tribe of Manasseh is from. Line up on line, precept on precept. This is going to be the book of Judges, the 6th chapter. So when we began to see that Yemaya originated as a West African river goddess, she is deeply honored throughout the African diaspora, including in Santorini, Candomblé, and I know that she is also venerated in Haitian Voodoo and Louisiana Creole Voodoo. Her colors are going to be blue and white, and she is represented by the number 7. So let's begin to break down Yam. Yam in the word in Hebrew is literally going to mean sea, Yam. So when we begin to look in Syria, and let's pull our Bibles back up, Genesis 10 and 22, when it begins to say the children of Shem, Elam, Asher, Apharxad, Lud, and Aram. Aram is where you're going to get the Arameans and the Aramaic people. Armenians and Armenians. And so when you begin to look at Aramaic language, it is where the Syriac nation and the Syriac languages are birthed out of. When you look at Rachel's brother Laban, or Laban, whose root literally means white or to turn right, which is where you get Elba and Alba, albino, from, we will see that he is called the Syrian. And so when you begin to look at the Phoenician language and you begin to look at the Hebrew language, both of them are birthed out of the Syriac root of the Aramaic language, okay? So when you begin to look in Syria and in the Mediterranean coast and in Ugaritic texts, let's see where the Ugaritic text would be. The Ugaritic text is not only going to cover the northwest and eastern Semitic languages, this is going to be the Canaanites the Akkadian, the Phoenicians, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, um, so on and so forth. So these are East African, West African, South African, West Asian people groups and languages. And when you begin to understand the fact that these people are who we would call the West Africans on today, a great conglomerate of them. So these are the same oral traditions. So in the Ugaritic, and the Ugaritic language is going to be known as reflecting the cuneiform in Mesopotamia, and it is related to the Canaanite and Hebrew languages. It is classified as Afro-Asiatic, and it is found in 1200 BC, aligning with the book of Judges. So this Ugaritic text that I'm about to explain Yam to is correlating to the book of Judges, okay? So when you begin to see the Ugaritic people talk about Yam, his name was spelled as Yamm, but also Yammu, which means sea. The word sea, as I stated in Hebrew, is Yam. So in this narrative, it portrays Yam as the candidate favored by the senior god El. So this is why it's going to be very important to understand that Yahweh came in and took over the personality traits and the land masses of the other sons and daughters who El began to favor above Yahweh. And this is what began to remove the feminine deities out of the biblical narrative altogether if you do not have a watchful eye. It begins to say that El favored another god, and then Baal came in to emerge victory over Yam. So this would be when, let's see, Yahweh, the sea god in the Bible. So let's see. In the Bible, it begins to see that Yahweh in the biblical text portrays as a storm deity. Baal is a storm deity who triumphs over the sea. So this would place Yahweh, let's see, Psalm 74:13-4. You divided the sea by your might. You broke the heads of the dragon in the waters. We know that Yahweh defeated, I'm going to leave that one alone because that'll go into Marduk. But Yahweh began to fight Yam just as Baal fought Yam to take over the sea. This is going to be found in the Baal cycle. I hope y'all catching what's going on. Yam was also known in ancient Egypt. Line up on line, precept on precept. He plays a role in the myth preserved in the so-called Astarte Papyrus, which is presumed to be an adaptation of Western motifs, though not necessarily the Baal cycle. Yam is portrayed as the enemy of the Enad, so on and so forth. Set, who serves as a stand-in god for Baal, is responsible for defeating Yam. It's essential to understand that Osiris and Set were in Egypt. Okay? And they ended up being conflated as one deity, although they originated as brothers. And so Set in Egypt is the one who fought against the serpent of chaos, just like Yahweh fought against the serpent of chaos who was over the sea, just like Baal fought the sea. So Yahweh, Set, and Baal already have two things in common. Out of 2 or 3 witnesses shall a thing be established. All 3 of them were seen in ancient Egypt. That's the third establishment of these 3 deities. Set was Lord of Libya. You don't say. Are we seeing what the Bible has been turned into and what's hiding underneath? And then let's see, when did Yahweh, Yah and Osiris in Egypt? Yah, Y-A-H, which is what you guys like to call Yahweh or Jah, began to take over as the moon god alongside Osiris in ancient Egypt, taking over the role and the identity of Set. And you have some Hebrew apologists who began to deny this fact. Set started to be seen, Yah was started to be seen in the New Kingdom from 1600 to 1100 BC. You want to know why this is important? Thank you, Ruach HaKodesh. Let's go get the book of Judges. Remember I said Judges started around 1372, right? Going all the way to 1100 BC. So when we begin to look at this timeline in the book of Judges, Gideon against the Midianites in the Bible, Gideon defeated the Midianites in the book of Judges, the 7th chapter, the same place where we begin to talk about Yam being seen in the Bible. So in the book of Judges, Gideon fought against the Midianites. Let's see, who did Moses learn from? Moses and Jethro. Moses learned from the Midianite priest of Jethro in Exodus 18. But after Moses was buried unto the Midianites, Gideon went to war against the Midianites because they worshiped Baal Peor. The Midianites were worshiping Baal. Let's begin to see who the Midianites, Sumerians, Mesopotamians, 1600 BC. In 1600 BC, the Midianites became one and the same as the ancient Mesopotamians and the Sumerians and Babylonians in southern Arabia and in the Sinai. So the Midianites went back to the worship of the Sumerians and the Babylonians and the Mesopotamians. And the Midianites were identified by a highly mobile pastoral trading life in 1600 BC. They were in Egypt in 1600 BC with the worship of Ea, with the worship of Yah, with the worship of Yahu in 1600 BC. 372 years before Moses was born, represented by their child lock in ancient Egypt. This is where you begin to see Yah or Baal or Set come in to remove the henotheistic practices of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Line up on line, precept on precept, which is why after Moses died and was buried unto Baal Peor, Akhenaten went into ancient Egypt to reestablish henotheism. At the same time, Gideon was warned against the Midianites to reestablish henotheism. Line up on line, precept on precept. There's always been a war between El and Yahweh / Set / Baal in the biblical narrative. So, of course, you would not hear about Yemaya, the feminine mother, or the Orisha over the waters and the seas or the fish. When we begin to even look at the word Maya, it is a Hebrew word, and we know the Mayan people speak an insular language linguistically related to the Ethiopian, the Egyptian, the Oromo, these Eastern and Northwestern Semitic languages, line up on line, precept on precept. When you begin to look at the word Mayan, Mayan in Hebrew, or M-A accent Ayan, it literally means fountain, spring, well, a source of water. This is going to be still found in Psalms 74 and 15, 2 Kings 3 and 25, Psalms 114 and 8, Hosea 13 and 5, Isaiah 41 and 18, Psalms 104 and 10, Genesis 7 and 11, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. Mayin, Yemaya, the mother of the springs, the mother of the fountain, the mother. And how can we begin to say the mother of the spring, the mother of the fountain? How are we feminizing Yam? Okay, we can agree that Yam existed in these texts. When you begin to look at the fountains and the springs and the wells, it said the woman at the well. Rachel was a woman at the well, representing the unmarried woman. In Near Eastern texts, the women had to go to the temples of Inanna, or the hand, the favor, the grace, Kadesh, the Holy Spirit, one time in their life, to be found by men as they went into them to begin to represent the Ruach HaKodesh, or the mother wisdom who was acquired at the beginning. And we begin to see the womb at creation is Benai, Binah, which is called understanding. The mother is always going to be the womb, or the fountain, or the springs that bursted forth as the travailing woman. When we begin to look at the root of Mayan in Hebrew, is going to be eyes. Literally, the word ayin, or the letter ayin in Hebrew, ayin, means eye. So the eye of God in ancient Egypt is going to be the watchful mother. She is the night watcher, the mother owl who broods and who covers her children under her wings. Owl in the Bible. Let's begin to get scripture for that. Give me a second, y'all. Under the wings. The owl is always seen after desolation begins to take place. Isaiah 34 and 15. After the remnant needs to be hidden and to be protected, the owl is there, and she was made into a demon by the worshipers of Yahweh. The wild beasts of the deserts shall also meet with the wild beasts of the islands, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screeching owl also shall rest there and find for herself a place of rest. There shall the great owl make her nest and lay and hatch and gather under her shadow. There shall the vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. There's more that I can say about that, because people begin to say that the owl represents Moloch, but I'm not going to fully get into that, because Moloch was also a created deity. So, yeah, this is all I'm going to give us when it comes to this topic, correlating Yam and Yemaya, the sea, showing how Yahweh, Yahu, Jah, Set, and Baal are all the same people in the Ugaritic text. Yam was called to judge the river, or to be the ruler of the water, just like we see Yemaya And Yam was also written in cuneiform as Ya'ami. This is closer to Yamai. Yaami. Wamu. Wamuum. Oh, Wamuum. Muum is mom. It's mom. So that's the feminine derivation. In the Akkadian, it would like to relate it to Tamtu, which was in Tamtu, which is going to take us, thank you, Holy Spirit, that's why I wasn't supposed to stop yet, to feminize it. So the Akkadian version of Yamu or Yamum, Yam Mom, is going to bring us to Tiamat. Tiamat, which we just basically read as the Akkadian interpretation of Yam, which is going to be spelled, where is it at? Well, I just spelled it. Tamtu. So yeah, and Tiamat is the cosmic ocean, and she is written about in the Enuma Elish. And as I've previously stated, the Enuma Elish is a Babylonian creation story found in Akkadian, found in Nineveh. And that's why I'm not going to fully get into it, because Tiamat be taking us into Marduk and all of these other things. But Tiamat is referred to as a woman and has various points in the epic. And she's anthropomorphically is featured such as with breast. When we look at El Shaddai, here we go anyway. Chad in Hebrew means breast. El Shaddai is the breasted mother who Yahweh came to remove from the biblical script. Tiamat is the Akkadian word for sea. So Tiamat is Yemaya. Tiamat is Yemaya. Let's say it again. Tiamat is Yemaya. Because Yemaya is just the feminine version of the word Yam for sea. There's nothing spooky about it. No ooga booga ooga booga. And then the Hebrew word Tiamat is going to be Tehom. Tehom, which is seen in Genesis 1 and 2, placing Yemaya at the head, at the beginning, who was possessed as the sea and the womb of creation. And of course, they would paint it to be chaotic, because childbirth is chaotic. Creation is chaotic. It is the travailing and the opening of the womb and the matrix to create. And Tehom means deep, and it means abyss. And Tiamat was the one who covered the sea, she who bore them all. They were mixing their waters. And this story is spoken about in the Persian Gulf. And we know that the Persian Gulf would be where the Elamites are, the Arabian Peninsula, and Dilmun and Sumer, so on and so forth. She is represented by the lower parts, a belly, ribs, a neck, head. She is the entrails, the arteries, the blood. She is the force of life. Tiamat, Yemaya, is going to be Yam, or the Tehom, at the creation, at the beginning. That's it.